If you're still judging the media by whether it's telling the truth, you're already behind. The game isn't truth versus lies anymore. It's persuasion versus awareness. Every day across news broadcasts, social media feeds, and political campaigns, we are being exposed to proven tactics that aren't meant to inform you, but to influence you. And it works, not because you're uninformed or gullible, but because your brain is doing exactly what it's wired to do. Today, I'm going to break down 3 specific cognitive biases that don't just make media manipulation possible, but they make it predictable. And I'll show you exactly how these psychological reflexes are routinely exploited in our media. And once you understand these patterns, you'll start seeing them everywhere. So let's get into it. First up, emotional framing. Did you know that most of our decisions are driven by emotion first, with some researchers estimating as high as 90%? Humans are not rational by default. We feel before we think, and that's not a flaw, that's biology. But it means that whoever controls the emotional tone of a message often controls then how the message is received and remembered. Emotional framing uses language, imagery, pacing, and tone to trigger specific emotions in order to bypass our critical thinking skills. It's not entirely about whether the content is true or false. It's more about how the story is constructed to provoke a visceral reaction. Watch how this shows up in real life.
That civilians too are caught up in this violence. Vivian Asporo, the missing woman from the poster, was one of them. Her body has just been found.
News outlets do this constantly. Think of the dramatic music under certain segments, the slow motion B-roll of human suffering, or the chaotic and rapid videos spliced together to create fear. Even viral TikToks apply sad filters or piano music to tragic clips, manufacturing a sense of moral emergency. None of these elements are necessarily deceptive on their own, but when combined, they create a constructed emotional experience that's meant to steer your reaction before your brain even has had a chance to evaluate the facts. This is emotional framing, and it's one of the most powerful tools in persuasion psychology. And you know what makes that even more effective? I used it at the very beginning when I pointed out that some researchers estimate up to 90% of our decisions are being driven by emotion before logic. Yes, let's talk about the bias that makes ideas contagious. Social proof. Sometimes called a trust signal. Our brains are wired to conserve energy, so we look for shortcuts to help us decide what to believe or who to trust. One of the strongest shortcuts we rely on is consensus. If something appears popular, authoritative, or widely accepted, our brains treat that as kind of evidence, even when there's no actual evidence or very little of it. This is why news segments often begin with phrases like experts say, or according to scientists, or an anonymous source said. It's why influencer marketing works. A product doesn't go viral because it's useful, it goes viral because it seems like everyone is using it. And get this, even the comment section on a video can shape your perception before you even engage with the content yourself. If all of the top comments, for instance, are angry, you're more likely to feel that you should be angry too. This is the power of social proof. It doesn't just reflect belief, it manufactures it. And in the media ecosystem where perception is everything, that bias is gold. But if social proof is like gold, the next one is like wildfire. The third bias is perhaps the most insidious, and that's repetition. Repetition bias is our tendency to believe something is true simply because we've heard it multiple times. It doesn't matter if the repeated phrase is vague, biased, or even misleading. The more often you hear it, the more real it feels. It really is a numbers game. A great example of this is the way the phrase unprovoked was repeated across headlines, press briefings, and news coverage of Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Remember that? Here's a refresher.
One thing that we heard about the movement of Russian troops into eastern Ukraine in February of 2022 was it was unprovoked. Here's a selection of what we know about that.
The Russian military has begun a brutal assault on the people of Ukraine. Without provocation, without justification, without necessity. This is a premeditated attack.
Russia's unprovoked and cruel invasion has galvanized countries from around the world.
Russia's unprovoked and unjustified attack on Ukraine.
Russia conducted an unprovoked war of aggression against Ukraine.
This unprovoked Russian war of aggression has got to be met with strength.
Vladimir Putin decided, unprovoked, to start this war.
So, was it unprovoked?
Well, we did hear that a lot of times. I actually asked a research assistant of mine to count how many times we heard that in the New York Times in that first year from February 2022 to February 2023 in their opinion columns was 26 times. Unprovoked.
This kind of repetition bias is why media outlets echo the same language across different mediums. Threat to democracy, trust the science, no one is above the law. Repetition works because it makes a message feel like the truth. And once something feels like the truth, we stop questioning it. So, what does all of this actually mean for you right now every time you open a feed or turn on the news? Remember that these aren't abstract theories. They're real psychological patterns being used every day in newsrooms, marketing agencies, political campaigns, and content farms. And that isn't to say there's never truth to whatever's being said, but it is to say these methods are frequently used to shape your perception of the truth. And the only real defense to this level of persuasion is awareness. The kind that lets you recognize when you're being emotionally primed, when consensus is being manufactured, or when repetition is being used to dull your skepticism. In other words, to develop a muscle for critical, independent thinking. That's what this channel is all about because it really is a muscle that you have to train, and that's what we do here. Understanding how persuasion works in media, in politics, in marketing, and how they cross over into each other so you can stay aware instead of reactive. Because the best way to stop being played is to learn the playbook. Until next time, stay curious and stay grounded. Thanks for watching. If you liked that video, check out this video next. And if you like this kind of content, please subscribe to my channel. I drop a new video every week.